haven't talked much lately about the ongoing efforts of YouTube and Twitter grifters to label everything as DEI and blame Sweet Baby Inc. for the fact that there are video games with women and people of color now. And that's because while they've continued their little tirades as Outrage merchants are wont to do, there's been precious little new contributed in the way of ideas to their cause. If you peek your head into channels like Melanie Mac and The Quartering, it's the same few topics that break big on Twitter, interspersed with random political bait to throw to their reactionary audiences, and personally, I find it tiring. I can only talk about these dorks getting mad at the looming specter of the DEI chin or whatever before it really sets in just how incredibly sad they are. Have you tried telling normal people about a DEI chin, by the way? Go outside, go talk to somebody on the street, ask them what they think of a DEI chin and just see how they react. However, recently a game came out that has been fascinating to watch them try and spin and react to as being DEI. Because this game in particular shows in real time just how poorly constructed their arguments are and how they don't really know much, if anything, about the games that they often call woke. I am talking about Bloober Team's remake of Silent Hill 2. This is a game I was incredibly apprehensive about. I haven't liked most of Bloober Team's games, and I thought their attempts at deeper emotional horror storytelling were flat at best and outright offensively tone-deaf at worst. A bad look for a company that was trying to tackle such intimate and psychological subject matter. It made me nervous to find out that this team was tackling a game that for so many players defined what it meant for a game to cover intimate and psychological subject matter in a mature way. It didn't help that the previews for the game looked consistently rough until release, and the changes they showed off to the story and gameplay removed from the context of actually playing the game seemed like they weren't so much staying true to the spirit of Silent Hill 2 as they were just trying to make their own. I can safely say I've never been so happy to be proven wrong about a game. Not only has Bloober Team stayed true to the spirit and tone of the original, but they've expanded upon it in consistently smart ways that managed to improve on a story that, for many, myself included, found damn near masterful to begin with. It isn't better than the original experience because nothing can really emulate that experience. But as a modern reinvention of the series, it's a genuine labor of love that brings Silent Hill to modern standards of gameplay and storytelling, while fleshing out the already memorable characters and world. But more than that, they have listened to criticism about the past depictions of mental health in their games like The Medium. It isn't often that you see a developer take this kind of criticism to heart, by the way. Bob, a longtime Silent Hill fan and critic of Bloober, has even acknowledged this, saying that they even sent him a personalized email. A lot of people might not get what the big deal is with the Silent Hill series, and as it's been over a decade since the last proper retail game, and almost 20 years since the last Team Silent game in Silent Hill 4: The Room, it's harder for new fans to understand, I think. If you've never gotten to play the series or you only know the movies, Silent Hill might just be a spooky old game series that has some great art design, but to so many players, it represents a lot more. And for a subsection of those fans, Silent Hill 2 in particular is resonant. It is an incredibly dark story that doesn't force its subject matter in players' faces like modern... Seriously? Seriously? It's an incredibly dark story that doesn't force its... What do you want from me? It is an incredibly dark story that doesn't force its subject matters in players' faces like modern, dark, gritty games. Looking at you, The Last of Us. I hope Neil Druckmann plays this and it makes him insecure. Neil Druckmann's Silent Hill would just be him getting tormented by the repressed memories of all the better art he stole from. That and maybe a Palestinian child. Anyway, Silent Hill 2 steeps the player in the macabre, nightmarish world of a seemingly shifting reality as you weave in and out of other characters' stories dealing with themes of sexual trauma, domestic abuse, bullying, suicide, regret, longing, and so much more. It's likely why it was chosen to be remade over 1 and 3, with 1 being slightly campier in its story and subject matter, and 3 being a direct continuation of that story. 2, however, stands alone both in tone and narrative. Yet, would you believe that not everybody is happy with the fantastic remake? Of course not, these are gamers we're talking about here. No, they've got to complain because Silent Hill 2 apparently has gone woke. By the way, this narrative was decided months ago. There was never a time when these dorks weren't going to make these videos complaining about Angela and Maria and DEI and how the game disrespects the original vision, probably because most of them haven't played the original games, barely played this one before making up their minds, and just use it as another angle to push their culture war nonsense. These complaints all began months ago, by the way, when a trailer was released and the usual suspects began decrying how character designs, namely Angela Orozco and Maria, had been changed. First off, I want to say, much like the Resident Evil remakes, it probably has something to do with facial capture, where character models are made to look more like actors to better capture the nuances of their performances without venturing into the uncanny valley, something this game does very well. So if you take Angela's actress Gianna Keel, for example, you can see the differences in the design from 20 years ago are likely to accommodate her face shape better and thus get a more believable performance, which is incredibly important for a game dealing with the incredibly dire subject matter, but most importantly for Angela specifically for reasons I will get into in a moment. If it seems like I'm focusing on Angela, it's because she's the main problem so many of these dorks have had with the game. There have already been a handful of mods for the PC version seeking to just make her more attractive.
This apparently on the right is what they thought Angela in 2024 should look like. That's not Angela, that's Mangela.
Angela wasn't exactly the prettiest, girl in the bunch, but the thing is, at least she was a fucking girl. You know what I mean? Like, femininity speaking, she definitely was feminine, and she had very typical features that were, pretty normal for a female. And all of a sudden they decided to androgynize her and turn her into this weird, I just don't know what it is. I don't even know what to call this at this point.
Shoving transgenderism in our faces to accept it, normalize it, make it seem like something that's always been there and everyone should just be cool with cross-dressing and maybe it's a dude.
Why don't you listen to me?
I am. You're not making any sense.
Your face doesn't make sense.
I am so sorry to have subjected you to that, but I need to lay on the fact that they don't find Angela physically attractive anymore to be a derogatory point against the game to these people. Because this particular point about this particular character's sex appeal shows that these assholes will complain about any perceived loss of attractiveness from digital women, even something as minor as a more realistic design for a character that has always been fully clothed, and they'll see it as some kind of woke agenda. This isn't a character that has ever been sexualized by the game, to be clear. They don't care about things like artistic intent or censorship. They care about being able to get off to fictional women on their screens, and the more realistic they are, the harder it is for their brains to fire dopamine receptors because they've all been conditioned by gooning to Eve from Stellar Blade. And so they claim Silent Hill 2 has been DEI'd, it's been wokeified, because Angela has been made less attractive. There's another crunchy little layer to savor in this shit parfait before we get to the nougaty core of the issue, and that's how so many of these same Outrage merchants love to position themselves as fans of a game franchise every time it comes out, which is always very funny in its own right to watch, because while they clearly don't know anything about said game or franchise, aside from maybe playing one game once a decade ago, they have to flounder through these basic Wikipedia franchise regurgitations to signal to their audience that they're capital G gamers as they pad their runtime for videos to get monetized. For example, watch some of Melanie Mack's most recent coverage of the newly announced Halo Studios. Just listen to how eloquently she describes the Halo franchise.
Now, Halo, obviously, you're talking massive IP, huge, massive fan bases. A fan base has been amassed from the Halo games, and Halo was really like the best of the best, especially when it came to FPS games. Xbox's staple, it really kind of put Xbox on the map if you're really looking at it like that. Especially like first 3 Halo games, Halo Reach even was good, but then things did start going downhill.
And of course, there are other examples. There's basically a template they all stick to when talking about a game or series that can safely be called a classic. For example, just filling in the blanks, the template would go something like this. Blank game is a classic blank genre franchise. I remember playing the first game when I was blank. On the off chance they actually played it, they might have a memory, usually defaulting to, I remember staying up late and playing it at a friend's house or something likewise nondescript. My favorite is when they decide to add some extra flavor that they got off Wikipedia, like saying it borrowed heavily from Resident Evil or something like that in the case of Silent Hill. They won't tell you what it borrowed from Resident Evil or how they differed, and I'd be surprised if they even told you which that they preferred, because having an actual opinion on a game isn't the point of these videos.
Silent Hill was a survival horror series that was published by Konami and released in 1999. It sold over 2 million copies and helped create the standard for horror games, alongside the Resident Evil series. A few years later, Silent Hill 2 was released on the PlayStation 2, and is considered to be the best game in the series by many people. When the Silent Hill 2 remake was announced, myself and the fans of this series could not have been more excited. However, watching the trailer, we immediately noticed a bunch of questionable changes. This upset many gamers who are sick of seeing our favorite franchise being chopped up by activists, taken out back, and put to rest. What started this whole controversy is the changes to the female characters.
They know their audience already has an opinion, and they're a sounding board to point that opinion back at them with no challenge whatsoever. In this case, the opinion, again decided months ago, was that Silent Hill 2 was a DEI woke remake. They jumped to the conclusion, and now they needed to find a reason why. Now, I'm not saying they don't play any games, they do, but I'm saying generally speaking, when it comes to how they cover the latest games their audiences are outraged about, they don't know fuck about shit. And they don't have to. They can regurgitate these basic wiki plot summaries and jump right into the outrage, talking about how the new Master Chief is woke because it looks feminine, when if they were an actual fan, they'd know that it's just very obviously based off of the same Spartan armor used in the original Combat Evolved. Or in the case of Silent Hill 2, how Angela Orozco is more masculine somehow. But in rushing to call Angela's design woke to score those internet points, they give up the game, revealing themselves as the gaming charlatans they are. They reacted reflexively, calling a remake woke without any good reason to begin with. And so it's just a mess now. They have their cart before their horses, their chickens before their eggs, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. In jumping to their preordained conclusion, they show how little credibility they have. Because of all the games to pick to call woke, Silent Hill 2 has always been woke. But first, let's get to Angela. Because as I'm sure many of you already know, if you think Angela Orozco is meant to be a sex symbol or even physically attractive to the player, you probably aren't a fan of Silent Hill. You might just be pretending to get outrage clicks. That, or you desperately need to seek therapy. Now, this is a 20-year-old game, but full spoilers apply from here on out. That's because, as I alluded to earlier, Angela Orozco is a traumatized 19-year-old victim of sexual assault from her father in the game's story. Her entire subplot deals with the trauma of her childhood, how it manifests, sometimes literally, and how it contributes to her suicidal ideation. She is not, and never has been, meant to be attractive to the player. Even in the original game, as a 19-year-old character, she was purposely depicted as looking older and was played by an actress in her 40s. How do I know that? From a documentary about the making of Silent Hill 2 over 20 years ago. Now, in the original, this approach made Angela's age a little bit more nebulous, and with her more youthful features and performance, she comes across as younger, which is more accurate to the intention of the character. Now, here's where I should note that all the people saying, well, Bloober Team's betrayed the original game's vision, almost anyone who's still making games and also worked on Silent Hill 2 20 years ago has pretty much given this game their full seal of approval and praise. The original director loved it and praised the new style and design elements, and Masahiro Ito and Akira Yamaoka returned for creature design and music respectively. They are the second and third people literally listed at the top of the credits. Over 20 years. That's how long Angela has been a fan favorite character in the Silent Hill community. When other games were just figuring out how to make likable protagonists, Angela was a side character that proved gaming was ready to leap headfirst into intensely psychological explorations of trauma, grief, and abuse with respect and dignity. While James' story, and to a lesser extent Eddie's, are important to the Silent Hill 2 experience, I think it's fair to say that for many fans and players, the moments most remembered have to do with Angela and Maria. So in calling out the attractiveness of this character, in particular as woke, they reveal so many things. They reveal that they don't actually know or understand Silent Hill 2 at a very surface level. They saw it as just another chance to make their audience angry, get some clicks, and keep pushing their DEI agenda narrative, in turn revealing that they only care about arguing in favor of sexualizing characters, regardless of purpose. Let me say this as plainly as possible. If you don't think Angela is attractive enough, you are arguing in favor of sexualizing a victim of child sexual abuse. That is what these freaks are arguing for, by the way, whether they mean to or not. If that's what you're intending to do, seek help and don't go within 200 feet of a school, like the restraining order says. And they can't even talk about how Bloober Team ruined the designs, because not only did they constantly credit the original Team Silent, but also consulted with original character designer Masahiro Ito throughout the development process. He's been giving them nothing but praise on Twitter, so even the original artists are happy with these new changes. But to this lot, the intention of the art doesn't matter. They don't actually care about the journey the developers want players to take. They care about how they can indulge their own base urges. They don't want actual characters or stories. They want slop they can shove in their gullet, and they will never be full. Probably the best way I can prove that they don't care about intention, that none of this is about letting games have sexual content and be more mature in their storytelling, which, by the way, is something they like to harp on. You saw it a lot around Stellar Blade, where they'd say, hey, if a game is rated M, it should be able to have sexual themes. These are games for adults. Who cares if they're mature? You can go watch the whole video I did about that game, but the end point is that for them, that maturity seems to extend exclusively to anime fantasy fuckdolls. And as Silent Hill 2 shows, not like actually mature themes around sexuality. Which brings me to the second reason why calling the Silent Hill 2 remake woke or censored is hilarious. Silent Hill 2 actually does have a sexualized character that is a temptress for the player, and that's Maria. Maria's origins are pretty up to interpretation, but it boils down to this. She's the sexualized doppelganger of James's dead wife, manifested to fuck with him, particularly using her feminine wiles. This really fucks James up because, as you learn in the opening of the game, Mary, his wife, died 3 years before Silent Hill 2 starts from a mysterious disease. What you learn later in the game, major spoilers if you haven't played it, is that while she was sick, James came to resent her as a burden and killed her. Some of this is up to interpretation based on notes and whatever ending you get, but it's a long-established fact that Maria is an expression of James's sexual frustration, a siren who constantly teases him, asking him for protection and companionship with plenty of double entendres and a sultry voice. I've always seen her as a manifestation of what James wanted Mary to be, a cracked mirror to reflect his regrets about how he treated his wife during her sickness. Because throughout the game, James rebuffs her advances, yet still grows close to her, culminating in one of the most iconic scenes in all of gaming. And in Bloober's Silent Hill 2 remake, this relationship has been so well fleshed out and realized, expanding upon additional aspects of James's trauma like his alcoholism that was only hinted towards in the original. Her sultry ways have been expanded for this game. There's a whole scene where she teases James while basically threatening to do a pole dance while James goes, no, anything but that. And if any of these dorks actually knew anything about Silent Hill 2, they'd have a much harder time making the argument to their audience that it's been wokeified or DEI'd or whatever. But with over 20 years between the original and the remake, there's a lot of room for them to wriggle in and craft the narrative regardless of truth. The truth of the matter is that these assholes were never fans of Silent Hill, whether that's Silent Hill 2 or the franchise at large. Because by their own metrics, they would call it woke. If it's not clear just by my discussions of Angela and Maria, Silent Hill 2 is a game explicitly addressing mental illness, and through its characters, many of the associated issues. Eddie has his own unique trauma from bullying that manifests in homicidal tendencies. Maria is going through a constant existential crisis if you've played Born from a Wish. And Angela literally has to face a horrifying recreation of her abuser. In the expanded remake, it's also much more clear that she's prone to PTSD episodes and panic attacks. And you might say, well, that doesn't make it woke. But in this case, I'm not using my definition of wokeness. I'll be using theirs. In some ways, this makes Silent Hill 2 the perfect game for them to run this little DEI cup game on for their audiences. They tell you to look one way, while ignoring the other points, all the while leading you to an empty conclusion. And it's perfect because of how empty it reveals them and their arguments to be. You can't wokeify Silent Hill 2 because by the arbitrary standards they constantly throw around, it's always been woke. This is a game about explorations of abuse, femininity, masculinity, gender roles, sexuality, grieving, trauma, and love. And all of those are pretty surface level. Both versions of the game kind of spell them out for you pretty clearly. You can't call out a character being made less attractive because the character's purpose was never to be attractive, but to be a representation of trauma and abuse. You can't say it's part of the DEI agenda to take sexuality out of games because it expands upon the original's mature exploration of sexuality and repression. And if they fall back on the argument that they just want attractive women in games, that reveals, as ever, they don't understand a world where women haven't been pornified. And they should seriously take a break from all the hentai goon sessions. Go outside, throw a ball, pet a dog, befriend a woodland creature. Call your mother. She misses you. Have you been getting enough to eat lately? You look pale. They don't care about games, the vision behind them, the history of the art. They aren't fans. They're lazy clown shoes asshats who often can't even be fucked to get details right for the videos they rake in outrage clicks for. And honestly, I hope more people start to see that with games like Silent Hill 2. Until now, they haven't had a game to target like Silent Hill 2, with its dense storytelling, established fanbase, and character studies. And I don't know if they'll get many more games that reveal them for the liars and grifters they are, at least until a hopeful remake of Silent Hill 3, a game that has famously inspired explicitly feminist and anti-religious readings of its subject matter for 2 decades now. Just wait until Thumb War's over here. Here's that you have an abortion and then kill God in the last 10 minutes of the game. But by then, I would really hope that this kind of fake outrage merchant has fizzled from the platform, driven off by their audience realizing how lazy, sad, and worthless their content actually is. A lofty dream, to be sure, but until that day, I will keep doing my duty in exposing and explaining just how much of sad little freaks they all are. Thank you very much for watching this latest video. I have been playing this game when I have had the chance in between working on several other very edited videos, so if you enjoyed this and you want to see more of my video game content or just my in-depth documentaries, essays, everything else I do on this platform, please think about giving down below. I am going to be moving soon, so I might have to take a couple days off from making and streaming videos, but not to worry. Like I said, I have about 4 current scripts in the works that I am in various stages of production on, so if you enjoy my content, you should be pretty set throughout the holiday season. That said, if you want to help me keep making my content and keep making everything bigger and better, please feel free to donate at the links down below, or if you'd like to join these groovy people right here and get cool fun little prizes like being able to come on the Discord and hang out with everybody. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.